Hello readers, welcome to my first review of a book/series on my channel. It would be fitting to start with The Three Body Problem by Cixin Liu because these books were a gift from my grandparents for Hanukkah this year, and I thought at first this year that I wouldn't be much of a reader, I wouldn't enjoy them that much, but I actually really enjoyed them, and I hope that I can pass it on to you, explain why I enjoyed them, and hopefully convince some of you guys to buy the books. So I have the entire set here. I will be reviewing the entire series. And I hope that I can convince at least a couple of you to go purchase it, to go support this man, because it was great literature, okay? It was fabulous. Alright, so I think I should give you a general timeline to make sense of my journey, sort of, while reading these books. So for the first book, it took me about a month to finish it. I started it right after Christmas time, and I finished it around my final season, which was like late January. But I thought it was pretty good. I kept going, and I wanted some more. So I got to about the first 100 pages of The Dark Forest, and then I just kind of stopped. I just didn't do anything for like a month and a half, 2 months almost. And I kind of regret that because it ended up being very good. So I wish I had finished it sooner, but I just kind of forgot about it because of all schoolwork and stuff. And after I went on like a trip where I'd like gotten like the first 100 pages of this done. And I brought this on the trip because I'm like, oh, why not? Why not? Might as well read it while I'm leaving. But I ended up reading from about 100 all the way to finishing it in that 9-hour trip. It was great. I honestly loved it, and it was like made me reinvigorate my need to read again. These are my first books I've gotten for a long time after not reading for a long time. So it was sort of like a revitalization in a way. It like led me to where I am now today, where I want to start a YouTube channel about books and I want to talk about them more and wants me to interact with the booktube community, which is, I think, pretty great. So they have a good place in my heart. And then after I got back from my trip, I could not wait to start this one. I finished it in about 5 days, which is pretty crazy for a book that's only about 200 pages shorter than the first two combined. I'd have to say my favorite part of the books that Cixin Liu writes are the ideas that he presents. He talks about things in a way that I hadn't thought about them before. He talks about the universe, he talks about space, aliens, new science, technology, time travel, a lot of stuff. And all starts right here in this book. This is the book that it all started for me. And I want to thank Quinn's Ideas, if you know who that is on YouTube. I look him up if I were you. Very good YouTube channel. He introduced me to the Three Body Problem universe. And yeah, he got me into the series, made me want to get it as a gift. So I can thank pretty much my reading renaissance to him, actually. So this book here is the reason that I started reading again, and I think it's very deserving of everything, all the praise it's gotten. The Hugo Award, especially, I think it says, yeah, right there. Winner of the Hugo Award, I think completely deserves it. Fantastic science fiction book. But the way that it just like resounded with me was honestly like, it was kind of like insane to think about, like, because I had never like resonated with a book this much before, or a series in general, because it just kept going as I kept reading the books and I kept getting into them. Like, especially once I started Death's End, I was like, wow, this is something that really speaks to me. This is something that I love. It's like I can really dive into it. I can feel like I'm in a different universe. That's like the point of reading. It's like escapism almost. But so when I started this book, I wasn't really expecting much because I had already kind of gotten the story spoiled for me by watching Quinn's videos, but it's fine, that's my fault. But I really was kind of shocked by how much it just blew me away with its depth in the world building. Even though it's a world that's very similar to ours at the time of the first book, it made me feel like I was in a whole different universe. Made me feel like I was like the Trisolarans, looking at like the different society, like looking at like all their culture and like their technology. Maybe that's just how it was, like looking from an American perspective into China back in the day, like, because the book starts during the Cultural Revolution, follows Ye Wenji as her father is killed by the Chinese, or by the communists, for teaching physics, and that leaves her very angry, and that leads up to the events of the book and the events of the entire Trisolarian conflict. But I think that's completely deserved. That's completely like, it makes sense. Like one of the biggest criticisms I've heard about Cixin Liu's writing is that his characters have no depth, which is absolutely not true. Like the characters have growth, they have depth over time. Yes, it is a plot focused book, and the series in general is very plot focused. But he attributes a lot of personality to these characters that we get to know, grow and love. But I have to say, for an objective review of the three body problem, I'd give it about maybe like an 8, because just when compared to the other two books, which I will talk about later, it just kind of blows them out of the water in a way, or it's kind of blown out of the water by the fact that the other two books have so much more scope than this. This one's like pretty much, it's the three settings: Red Coast base, um, Earth, like normal life, and then three body world, which is kind of like a video game thing. If you've seen the show, it's obviously a lot easier to envision if you've seen the show, which I've watched the first 3 episodes of. But it's like a VR world, like a MetaQuest thing, like a virtual reality thing meant to solve some problems. Like the three body problem, like the title of this book. Like when I first read this book, I didn't realize that it was an actual physics problem. You can like look it up. It's like, I think when three bodies are rotating around each other, it's impossible to predict like the ways that they will go, which does have implications for the book and like the aliens in this book with the Trisolarans. I'll let you find that out though, what exactly those implications are, because I'm not gonna try and spoil too much, because obviously I want you to go read them. But this book is like, the character work in it, it's very interesting because it's kind of structured like a detective novel. Like from the Sherlock Holmes I've read, it's kind of like an intergalactic mystery where you feel like you're like a detective trying to solve like a universal crime, like a crime against the humans. Because the plot of this book is that physicists are dying, they're committing suicide because physics just stopped working. Like particle accelerators, they aren't working anymore. And I think that's such an interesting concept because it's just like, obviously I've never seen anything like it before, but it's like, what could possibly rock the laws of physics so hard that even the ones with the most understanding out of anybody would come to like quit. They're done. They can't do anything else about it. It's broken. Like, I think there's an analogy in the book called the shooter and the target, which is, imagine if your entire world is that target. You're getting shot at by a sharpshooter, and the law is that every like 10 seconds a shot is fired 5 centimeters to the right. But one day, what if the shooter decides to aim up? It's like maybe a force beyond your understanding could possibly have effects on you and your life that you cannot even comprehend. And I just think it's so like, it's kind of like Lovecraftian in essence, because it's like, how is this able to, it's like, I don't really know how to explain it. It's kind of difficult, but it's like a creature with force outside of what you can possibly dream of or understand is manipulating your life and your family's lives and your friends with no thought to consequence, mostly just for fun. It's just kind of like shocking. Like when I first found out about that in the first book, I was like, wow. I was like, it was crazy to me how they could just not care almost. Well, obviously they did care for reasons I won't disclose right now, because obviously you want to go read the book. But yeah, the big bad in the book, the Trisolarans, they want Earth, obviously. But it's just so interesting how like the factions arise on Earth. There's like the people who side with them, there's people who hate them, there's people who just want to get away, the escapists. And that develops more and more as you get farther in the series. Those people gain more depth as you get on. Their reasoning becomes more sound. You can't really decide. You can't really side with somebody because they all have valid reasons to keep doing what they're doing. Like they either hate humanity or they're just done. They just want to leave. And I think that's pretty great. Like writing on the side of Cixin Liu, that he can make me and other people agree with every single side of the conflict except for, I don't know about that one. But he can make me agree with every single side of this conflict and like side with them and like care for them. He's like, I can relate to them in a way, like it's like they're trapped almost. Like it's like a animal in a cage trying to escape. And I just find that concept so interesting. It's just, yeah. But yeah, I'd have to give this book an 8 out of 10. Sadly, it can't be a 10 out of 10 because it was just, the other books, it pales in comparison to other books. Like it's like an exponential scale. But this book has amazing plot. Like the plot twist at the end is insane. It's like made me gasp. I was like, oh, no way. And then I thought it was like crazy thing. But then obviously the next books go and do it 3-4 times more. And it's like, it kind of makes this one a little bit less. Still great, but not as great as it could have been or could have been executed. But yeah, it's an 8 out of 10 for me. Pretty good book. I would recommend. And if you don't like this book, I would recommend you keep going because it only gets better from here. And also, this might be a little pet peeve of mine, but I hate it when they put like these fake stickers on the covers of books. You can't scratch it off or anything. This one has two of them. It's like this one and this one. It's like, why do you? I know it's gonna be on Netflix. Can you just? I just want to see the cover. You know. So, anyways, on to the Dark Forest. If the first book didn't convince you to finish the series, finish it out, I think this one will. This one is just it's a tour de force. I rated this one at 10 out of 10. And it's just like as I said before, it may seem a little bit disingenuous to rate it at a 10 out of 10 even though I stopped at 100 pages for like 2 months. But I think that wasn't entirely because of the content of the book. There was some parts of the book, like the main character of this one, who is actually different from the first book. Is kind of an egotist in a way, or like very selfish. And you'll see that if you read it. He just doesn't like he gets assigned this massive responsibility, and then he doesn't do it to a point where it starts to harm other people and his friends around him. And eventually, when he does eventually take up the role and position he was given, it's a little bit too late to the point where a lot of people will die because of his actions. And it made me feel like he didn't care at first, but I realized eventually that he would have had to act anyways, just because the looming Trisolar threat, and he was just delaying it, which makes him kind of a selfish person. But I think that's just a flaw in his character. It's not a bad writing choice by Cixin Liu at all. It's just it's a result of his actions in the book, and I think actually a returning character from the first book in this book is actually a great character, Shi Kuang. He provides like a comedy aspect to this very dark story. Otherwise, that I think is like a breath of fresh air. You know, you're in a cave. It's like that one gasp of light on the end of the tunnel. It's like, everything's gonna be all right because he says so. But initially, when I first read this book, I thought there was absolutely no way that Death's End could top the last like maybe 200 pages of this book, because the last 200 pages was mwah, chef kiss, perfect. It was so good. It had me like strapped in my seatbelt. I churned through the entire thing in probably like an hour and a half, and it was like I instantly talked to another friend of mine who reads, because I was like, this book is so good, you have to read it. He had read the Three Body Problem, but he hadn't read this one, and so I immediately gave this to him afterwards, and he went and read it, and he was also as amazed as I was, and it was so impactful, because the way Cixin Liu just ties in like loose ends, because when you're reading, you'll notice things that he doesn't mention for maybe like 200 pages. You're like, where did that go? Like, what's going on with that? And then it comes back, and it's like, oh, I see. He was waiting for that to set up. It's like there's a secondary main character in this book named Zhang Beihai, who we kind of don't understand why he's in the book in the first place. He's like a pilot for the Royal Navy or something like that. But he ends up having a massive impact on humanity in general by the end of the book, and you'd never see it coming, because it's like an exponential, like his impact, and then he just has a massive like impact, obviously, on the characters in the book. And I think that his character and Luigi's character, they complement each other kind of, because they both have very different ideals. Like Zhang Bahai is an escapist, as you'll see, but yeah, he's a very interesting character. He's kind of like a two-sided character, like an anti-hero in a way, which makes him interesting in the context of humanity is trying to survive against a big evil, in where there wouldn't need to be an anti-hero because everybody is uniting against this foe, like the Trisolarans. But it's so interesting how Cixin Liu manages to introduce these side characters that they represent like a virtue of humanity kind of way, they represent a way that humanity is able to survive, like able to defend against Trisolaris in a way. I think Zhang Beihai is obviously the representation of how to escape, how to hide, which I think he's the primary voice of them in the book. I did think that there was a part of this book that was rather unnecessary, is that the main character, he pretty much gets to do whatever he wants, and there's like a long 40 page section about how he imagined a girlfriend. And I think it's just not that impactful, because after this first book, after this second book here, and the third book, they barely mention it at all. So it's kind of like they just forgot about it, which I mentioned how the loose ends, they kind of like tie up, but this one doesn't really. It just like kind of like it strings on for a while, but it just like tapers off towards the end, which is okay. It's like, obviously it can't be perfect, but I think that it was a little bit of a waste of pages, even with like this 500 page book. Like it could have slimmed down maybe a little bit. But yeah, the book it takes there's a time jump in this book around I think 300 pages to about 200 years in the future. And the one part I love about this book so much is that it manages to like retain the sense of humanity that it established in the first book, like the unity, because the entire world's coming together to fight this big threat. But it also manages to, once you go to the future, seem so independent. It seems so like indifferent to everybody else. It's like they don't care anymore. They're doing it because they have to, not because they want to. It's like they're being forced into this conflict, and they'll woefully unprepared and ready to accept peace when it may not exactly be coming, which is an interesting trope that I don't think I've ever seen before done like quite like this, like a false flag in a way. But the main conflict, the main like action, like the peak action of this book is like about 100 pages long. It's like a big space battle. It's like it's so interesting because it's like humanity was really caught off guard. It's like it was just so insane to me how he managed to shock me like that. It was like I thought in my mind like, yeah, they could be attacking, but are they really? Because there's so much evidence pointing to them being friendly now. But then boom, it's like I did not expect that at all. It was just so crazy to me. So yeah, in the end, I have to give this book a 10 out of 10 just because the way it like wrapped me into the world. I felt like I was like in the world, you know. I felt like not many books can replicate that to the way I did here. The characters felt interesting, they felt deep, they had motivations, they had flaws, they loved people, they hated people, and they all had their own reasons for doing what they did, and that like he explained it all like so well. And that's really what like wrapped me in is like the character work here is actually really good for a hard sci-fi book, which is really shocking because usually hard sci-fi just focuses on like the science, you know, they focus on the plot, but and leave the characters behind. But this book, it does not leave them behind. It keeps them along with it, and does not let them go. Okay, this book is actually like I think it has one of my favorite characters in literature in general, which I think you'll understand when you get to it, when you get to meet him. But he's so interesting in his motivations, and he's like a wild card almost. He just he does whatever he wants, and but still has reason for it. And I don't see many characters done well like that. So I think for that reason, along with the amazing world building, I have to give this book a 10 out of 10. Would continue reading. If you don't like this book, I would not recommend going to Death's End, because this book is pretty much just Death's End light, and Death's End expands so much more on the concepts here, the topics, and I think now would be a good time to spoiler warning, because it's kind of hard to talk about Death's End without spoiling a little bit of the book. But at the end, I'll have a comprehensive like, should you read, should you not? I think you know what I'm going to say, but just courtesy. But yeah, I think this is a 10 out of 10 read. Please read it. Please do. Okay. If anything, just read the first one and then this one. Thank you. So, Death's End by Cixin Liu. Absolute chunker of a book. I think 630 pages. It's really, really long. Surprisingly, it only took me the least time to finish, but I think at that point, I was so invested in the series, I really just wanted to see where things go. And it did go a very interesting way. I will say that. I was not expecting where this story would lead, where it would finish. I Small spoiler warning here, but about 186 million years passed between the start of this book and the end of this book. All that's about the most of the time is about in this part of the book, but there's some very interesting parts, like the main character Shangzin. She's past the sword, which is at the end of the Dark Forest, is the thing that deters the Trisolarans from invading Earth. But she fumbles it horribly. I'm sorry to admit, but she's kind of a dumb character in my opinion. She's like Luo Ji, but like an altruist kind of. She cares about everybody else way more than actual future humanity. Like she'd save one person but kill a million, kind of, which she does multiple times in this book. She makes some big mistakes in here. Like humanity, Trisolaris begins to attack humanity. The second Shangzin becomes sword holder, which is, if you didn't get it, it's the person who holds like the switch that would blow up Earth pretty much and render Trisolaran like attacks, and like they wouldn't want to come in here anymore because like you wouldn't want to live in a broken world. But she doesn't click the button and they invade, and then they put everybody in Australia, and then that's like 200 pages of this book is just antics in Australia, like I'm probably right about here. But yeah, that's her first major screw up, but later on she doesn't for some reason stops a force of people trying to make a technology that would eventually save humanity. Like it is revealed later on in the book that this technology, like the lightspeed ship, would have saved the entirety of humanity by creating a black domain, which I will not explain now. But if you want to read this book, it goes way in depth about it. It's fantastic, and there's like in here, there's like I think about 100 pages there, where there's this guy Tian Ming whose brain they shot into space, and there's like he writes these fairy tales and sends them back to try and guide humanity on Trisolarian technology, because he gets picked up by the Trisolarian ship because they announced to Trisolaris like, hey, there's this brain, you want to study our brains? And they go find Tian Ming, they revive him, and they keep him alive by them, and he learns about Trisolarian and their technology, and manages to sneak a secret hidden message to humanity, because obviously the Trisolarians don't want humanity to know about like lightspeed ships and like black domains and the dark forest nature of the universe. But Tian Ming is able to tell humanity through a meeting with Shangxin that they have to do certain things to stay alive. They obviously, it's a very long, I think it's about 100 pages, as I said. It's like literally fairy tales, but like secret meanings. And he explains many things, but humanity does not get a couple of them, and it will eventually be their downfall. Because at the end of the book, a third race known as the Singers will send them a dual vector foil, which is like this little credit card shaped thing. It just flies at the speed of light towards the solar system and flattens it into two dimensions, which is a little bit morbid, but all except for 2 people in the solar system die, and the people who get stuck on Starship Earth. But I think it's like it's so interesting to me. It's just how he manages to intertwine all these ideas. He has so many ideas that they're so cool. The way that he links them all together, it all ties together in one big knot at the end, like the pocket dimension, stuff like that. And yeah, if you don't know what these are and you haven't read the book yet, like, why are you here? You know. So I think I would have to give this book another 10 out of 10, just because the way that he melds it. He does. It's like Dark Forest but better. If you can make it 10 out of 10 any better, this would be the way to do it, because he manages to pack so much content in this book here. It's just so amazing to me, because he can just take these ideas that aren't fleshed. He says an idea and then spends a long time fleshing it out with like in-world experiences, people discovering things. The first chapter of this book explains an idea that occurs maybe like 300 pages in, which is super cool, because when I realized that, I'm like, oh my god, the first chapter is happening. And it's just, I feel so smart. It's kind of egocentrical, but I feel so smart when I'm reading a book like this, because it's like he makes it easy to understand, but he makes you feel smart while understanding. Like you discovered it almost. Like you could have discovered this, even if you don't have any science or physics backgrounds. He just makes it seem like you are the person who did all this research, did all this discovery, and went and explored the universe, which is honestly something that we might not get to see. So sadly, but I'd have to give this book another 10 out of 10. You know. As expected, this entire series gets a 10 out of 10. The 8 out of 10 for Three Body Palm gets rounded up just because of how great these books are. And yeah, I would 100% recommend that you read this book here. This book is such especially the first one has a much wider appeal to a lot of people. I understand that the books 2 and 3 are kind of niche. Like some people might not like them, some people might love them, like me. But I think this one, there's something to love for everybody in here, because it reads like a movie almost. Like it reads like a mystery movie where you're trying to uncover some bad guy. And I think the entire series just builds on that in such a wonderful way. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed. But I have he's written a couple more books. His publisher published a book called The Redemption of Time by Baoshu, and I might read that one. It's like an unofficial 4th book. It's about 290 pages. But apparently it's okay, so I kind of want to see how the story goes, but currently I'm on a Stephen King binge right now, so I'll have some of those videos out eventually if you guys want them. But yeah, thank you. My next review will be Dune by Frank Herbert, so stay tuned for that if you're interested. Thank you.